In this video, we're going to talk about similar figures. This is part of Unit 7, so our new color is pink. So congruent objects. These are objects that are of identical size and shape. That means they are the exact same size and they are the exact same shape. Congruent figures are figures or shapes with corresponding parts that are congruent. Okay, and that again means they are the same size and the same shape. So corresponding means the longest side of the shape is identical to the longest side of the second shape. Similar figures. These are figures that have corresponding angles that are congruent, but corresponding sides with proportional measures. So in other words, this means that they are the same shape, but they are different sizes. So same shape, different size. In order to find missing side lengths, we set up a proportion by determining the corresponding size of similar figures. All right, so if I look at example 1, the corresponding sides, again, are like the shortest side of one figure, the longer side of one figure. And the easiest way to do this, I think, is to draw an arrow from left to right, linking the corresponding sides together. So in the first example, 3 is the shortest side of that quadrilateral. So 3 is going to correspond with the shortest side of this quadrilateral is x. And so I like to draw an arrow linking those two together. Okay? And that means the 8 has to correspond with the 32. So again, I like to draw an arrow linking them together. It helps me set up my proportion. So my proportion for this one, in order to find the length of x, would be 3 over x. So 3 over x is equal to 8 over 32. And again, that arrow kind of helps me set up the proportion. I start at 8 and I go to over 32. I start at 3 and I go to over x. So then I would use my same techniques of cross multiplying and solving like we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. So I would have 3 times 32 is equal to x times 8, or 8x. 3 times 32 gives me 96, so I have 96 is equal to 8x. And then I can divide both sides by 8. I can find my calculator here really quick. There it is. So 96 divided by 8, I believe, is 12. Battery's dead. Yes, it's 12. So I would divide both sides by 8 here, divide by 8, and I would have 12 is equal to x. So the missing side length here would be 12. All right, example number 2. This was a little bit trickier because our triangle had been reflected. It's been flipped over. So for me, the easiest thing to do first is to pick out the longest side. So the longest side of this triangle is the 14. And then I would need to match it with the longest side of the other triangle. The longest side of this triangle right here is a 7. So my 14 is going to match up with the 7. And then I can match up the other side. Here, the 6 is going to match up with the x. So when I set up my proportion, I have 14 over 7 is equal to 6 over x. So cross multiply and solve. 14 times x is 14x is equal to 7 times 6. 6 times 7 is 42. Okay. And I would need to divide both sides by 14. And that would give me x is equal to 42 divided by 14 is 3. Always a good idea to circle your final answer so it's easy to see, so it's easy for you to go back and check your work. All right, last example, example number 3. Again, easiest thing to do is to pick out the longest side and match that side up first. So in this triangle, the 10 is the longest side. And then in this triangle right here, the 110 is the longest side. So we know those two are going to match. Okay. And when you're given 3 different measurements, I try to pick out the shortest side next. This one's a little bit tricky, but if you look carefully, the side with the X on it, that's the shortest side here. And if I look at these measurements, I have 110, 77, and 66. 66 is going to be the shortest measurement here. This triangle has actually been rotated a little bit. All right, and then I'm going to take a minute to match up my last side. So I have 7, and that's going to match up with 77. That's the middle length. Okay. For these, when you have an extra piece of information, you can choose whether or not you want to use the 10 and the 110 or the 7 and the 77. You'll get the same answer either way. I'm going to go ahead and do both just so you can kind of see what happens. Every time, however, I have to use the X, that missing piece, and whatever corresponding side goes with it. So for this one right here, I have X over 66, X over 66. And that's going to be equal to, let's try 7 over 77 first. Okay. So if I cross multiply and solve that one, let's tilt this up a little bit so you can see. I would have X times 77, or 77X, is equal to 66 times 7. At this point, I'm going to need to dig out calculator with functioning battery. Here we go. 66 times 7 gives me 642. So I have 77x is equal to 462. You can divide both sides by 77. And then I have x is equal to 462 divided by 77. And I end up with 6. Okay. Just to prove that you could really choose and it doesn't matter which corresponding side you pick, I'm going to go ahead and do the other one just so you can see. So I have to start with the x over 66. And that's going to be equal to, and then we'll look at the purple link here, 10 over 110. Okay. Cross multiply and solve. So x times 110 gives me 110x. 66 times 10 gives me 660. Solve that equation. I would divide both sides by 110. And I end up with x is equal to 6. So either way, I ended up with that x value right here as 6, and it didn't matter which side I chose.